So there are my two front leg pieces with their elastic sewn in. I'm going to pop them aside just for now. Next piece we're going to use is our foot band. This goes around your toe. So you've got two of these. Don't get these confused. Check using your pattern that you've got the right pieces, because these are similar in appearance to the pieces used for the binding around the top of the boot. Okay, so you should have just marked notches on the edge of the band here and here. What you're going to do is you're going to stitch from the first notch to the second notch on both sides, top and bottom. And you're going to stitch, it says on the pattern 0.8 millimeters in, so just under a centimetre in. You want to be just under a centimetre, and you're just going to stitch along there on both of them. Let's move this so you can see the machine. So my first notch mark is there, and I can see that there's my 1 centimetre line, so I'm just going to be a little under that, and I'm just going to stitch along. And what this stitch does is it's going to act as a guide, so that we're going to need to curve this toe band round the front of your boot, and this is going to help us to do that. I'm going to keep going until I get to that second notch. There it is. One more for luck. There we go. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Oops, sorry, I just knocked the camera there. Here we are. This is a really nice project, and let me know in the comments how you're getting on. Have you ever made slippers before, or boots? I've never made boots before I got this pattern, so I always love making something new that I've not made before. It's nice, it's exciting to go on that journey, and I was pleased how well they turned out. So I'm going to do that those same rows of stitches on both of the toe bands, or the foot bands. So we've done the stitches on both of those toe bands. Now what we want to do is we're going to snip up to the stitch line, but we're not going to cut through the stitches. And I've just remembered something from when I made these first time, which is I thought to myself, I wish before snipping that I had gone through and marked my notches with a contrasting colour chalk, because once you've snipped into that line, there's a nice centre front mark here on this, and I know you can find that by folding it in half, but I just thought actually it would be quite handy to just mark those notches back on there. Just, I don't know, helps you get your bearings, and when you're attaching the toe bands to the feet, it will help you out. So you've coloured in those notch marks with some chalk. I mean, if you already drew them in chalk anyway, then that's fine, but I just marked my notches by snipping, and then of course look what I'm doing, I'm snipping, and they're going to get hidden. So I'm just cutting carefully towards the stitch line, but I am not cutting through those stitches. And what this is going to do is it is going to allow us to splay. I'm going on the trampoline. That sounds like fun. So what these snips are going to do is they're going to allow us to essentially create a curve where there was once a straight line. Oh, they're so happy today. I think it's the sunshine. It's making everyone feel happy. There we go. Won't be long before we're taking afternoon tea in the garden. So you get the idea. You're going to carry on and you're going to just snip up to but not through the stitches along all those 4 edges. So we're now on to the exciting bit, which is attaching the toe band. I'm going to start seeing this come together. I want my print to kind of run like that in the same direction, so that when that's attached there, that will just continue. And you're putting right sides together. You're going to match up that notch there for the centre front with your toe notch, and put a little clip there. You can clip or pin, whatever you would prefer. And then we're going to bring this round, and this is going to come all the way around here and match here, and then it's going to come all the way around here and match there. So you're going to end up like so. So I'm just going to pin or clip that all the way around. Let's grab some more clips. And all these processes that you're doing, you are going to repeat the same processes for making the lining. So apart from, obviously you don't attach these bits to the lining, but everything else I've done so far, you're going to do the same for the fleece lining. So if you find it easier to do so, you can just do that as we go along. In the instructions it says make the uppers, the outer bit, and then kind of it says repeat steps, whatever it is, like 1 to 20 or something, again for the lining. But you could do it as you go along if you prefer, it's up to you. And this is why, you know, those little snips there that we made and that stitch line that we made is helping us to fit that band round the curve. And the notch there where you start your stitching should fall in line with this area here where you put the pull loop. Got some fluff on that clip. I tell you what, that fleece lining, my goodness. You're going to be spending some quality time with your vacuum cleaner once you've been cutting that out, I'll tell you that much, because it is really fluffy and it's going to fluff everywhere. It looks like it's snowing. Let's just tweak that round a bit. There we go. That looks like it's sitting happily. So you're going to do that on both of them, and we're now going to stitch all the way around here. 1 centimetre seam allowance, back stitch to begin with. Right sides together, of course. And I'm just matching the edges here up with my line that says 10 on it for 1 centimetre. So I should find when I'm coming to this curve that I am sewing just to the inside of that stitch line that I made before. I hope my hand isn't in the way there and that you can see what I'm doing. Take your time around the curve. When you're coming around curves, reduce your stitch length and the curves are easier because each stitch is pulling the fabric through by a smaller amount, so it's easier to manage the curves. And it will feel like this bit is pleating and puckering and what have you, but as long as it's flat where your stitches are, then it will be fine. back on the easy bit again. It just made that little noise as it went over the pull loop because it's sewing through a few layers there. So there you go. So now when you turn that through, you can see that's what your toe will look like. Press that little bit out. There we have it. So yeah, you can't quite get your print to match up at the side there because of the nature of the curve, but it's quite cute how it matches up at the front with that stripe. So you're going to repeat that on both. Let's move this back a bit so you can see. That's going to be your toe area. So repeat that on both of them, and then we'll crack on with the next step. Now I've got a confession. Look what I did. And that one I did the birds facing down, and that one I did them facing up. And you know what? I kind of think, looking at it, that I prefer them that way round. So I'm going to unpick. I'm going to unpick this one, flip it round and do it so that they are both like this with the birds pointing upwards. Wouldn't be a good sewing project without a bit of unpicking, would it? So I'm just going to unpick that, flip it round, sew it back on. Thought I'd share that with you. And then once I've done that, then we can get on to the next stage. There we are. So they are now all good. The next stage is to do some top stitching. So what we're going to do is, it's kind of like when we understitch something, we're just going to press that seam allowance all towards the band area, and we're going to stitch along here, and that just keeps everything sitting nice and flat and where you want it to be. So I shall do that next. So I'm going to use a straight stitch, and I'm just going to come in a couple of millimeters in on this side, and I'm just going to do it by eye. So I'll just position my needle where I think I want it to be and hand wind that needle into the fabric. There you go, that looks good. Make sure that my stitch length is on 2.8. I won't worry about a back stitch because that's all going to get encased. Oh, it's really tricky to see actually. I'm kind of peering over my phone. There we are. So I'm just, if I show you what I'm doing, under here all of this seam allowance is pushed towards this side. So I'm stitching the seam allowance to the toe band, and it's just going to keep the shape looking nice. And top stitching is also a nice finishing detail as well. I'm making sure that everything's pressed flat. I don't want for this to pleat up like this or anything like that. I want to keep that seam flat and open. I'm getting to that chunky bit where we've got the loop. And now I'm coming onto the inside of this curve, so I'm just going to keep everything pressed towards here and keep the seam allowance, keep that seam nice and open. And just travel around that curve. I'm going to come all the way back round to the other side and repeat that on both of the feet. There you go. So can you see that stitch line all the way around there? And underneath it will just look like that. So do that on both. That'll give you that nice top stitched edge. Create a nice shape around the toe of the foot. Now there's our 2 panels there coming along nicely. We're now going to do a little stay stitch along the shorter curve, so it's exactly the same as what we did before really. We're just going to create a stitch. We're going to come in just under 1 centimetre and we're going to stitch all the way around this curve, and this is because in the next step we want to attach the boot front. So we're going to do the same as before. We're going to make a stitch, we're going to snip up to the stitch, and that's going to allow us to take a curve and turn it into a straight line, if you see what I mean. It will become clear. And again, you're going to have to do this all in the lining, so you can do that at the same time if you like. There you go. So can you see that's curved stitch line? Whoops. And then what I'll do is I will just snip into the curve, but without cutting through. And in fact, do you remember what I did last time? Just mark, I mean it's pretty obvious where the centre front is, but I'm just going to chalk mark that centre front notch so I don't lose it in all these snips. So by cutting, at the moment on this side I've got a curve, and this hasn't been cut into, so to sew that to the boot top, which is going to sit here, that's going to be quite tricky. On this side, however, because I've snipped in, I can now take what once was a curve and open it up into almost a straight line. And this is what the reason why we do this, and it just makes it easier. So you don't need to cut triangles, you're just going to cut straight lines in there. You don't need to take chunks out of it. So curve, straight line, just allows you to take that curve and make it into a straight line. Do that on the other one. So the next step is to attach, and take that front piece there and we're going to attach this. So I know that this is the top and this is the bottom because my print is running in that direction, but if you're working with a fabric that doesn't have a print, just look at you would have got a different sort of notch on the top there. It would either be 2 notches or it would be that little hexagonal shape. So it's pretty obvious with this one which is the right way round. And then I've got my 1 notch on the bottom there. So I'll put those right sides together, bring you down a bit, and I'm gonna match those. And actually it's a bit of pattern matching as well with this because I've got the kind of the print that helps me too. So I'm going to put a clip there, and then I'm going to, because of having snipped into that curve, I can open it up and match it to that the other fabric. See, so I've taken that curve and I just splay it out like so, and I can make it match that straight line of the booty front. And so I'll put some clips in there. A couple of clips on the other side too. And what you'll find is that you've got these sort of pleats here, but when you're sewing through flat fabric, and then that will just end up, when you turn it through, it will look like that. Oh yeah, hello, you come to see what I'm doing. So it will end up looking like that. So we're going to just sew that together now. So on that side it will look like that, and on that side it will look like that, and this bit will be all folded up, but like I say, when it turns through it will make that lovely boot shape. So let's whiz you over to the machine. Let's see. Actually, I think it's best to sew with the toe side looking at you, facing up, because then you can just check that you've got it nice and straight. So matching up the raw edges, and off I go. Remember, this is a 1 centimetre seam allowance, so I'm lining up these raw edges with my 10 centimetre line there. 10 centimetre, 10 millimetre. 10 centimetres would be way off. And you just come into the inside of that original line of stitching that you did before. There you go. You're beginning to get the shape of that boot now, so we'll do the same on the other one, and then we're cracking on.